Assalamu alaikum. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I hope everyone is okay. This is a live about the 18th of September, a day that we should remember and commemorate in Eritrean history of human rights. طيب السلام عليكم. يا ريت لو نعمل شير لللايف في صفحاتنا حتى نقدر نوصل هذه الرسالة. هذه الرسالة بمناسبة يوم 18 سبتمبر 2001 و18 سبتمبر بالأمس، يعني مر علينا الذكرى 18 سبتمبر 2001. 19 سنة من حدث تاريخ حصل في إريتريا انتهكت فيه الحقوق والحريات، وأول هذه الحقوق هو حق الرأي والتعبير، وأيضا عمليا المؤسسات اللي كانت إلى حد ما موجودة حتى وإن كانت ضعيفة صارت الدولة إلى دولة ديكتاتورية لفرد واحد بدل من أن كانت تحكم بنظام ومجموعة. طيب, so this is a quick reminder about the 18th of September 2001. This day marks an important day. Actually, it's a turning day in the Eritrean history of human rights. And when we talk about human rights, we're talking about the rights of every single individual, regardless of who they are or where they come from. And to be more specific in our context, we're talking about human rights in Eritrea, the country. Eritrea gained its independence in 1991 and officially in 1993 after a referendum with Ethiopia. For those of you who don't know, Eritrea is a country that in the Horn of Africa. So it started functioning as a one-party state after independence in 1991 for about 10 years. Within these 10 years, there were so many obstacles that were obstructing the process of democracy and the rule of law. There was a war, and also there were so many challenges, and as a nation that was emerging, from the ruins of war, I think we had to go through the process of some sort of friction between the different people who were in power to assert their positions, and as a result, we had some sort of friction between the parties who were fighting for the independence of the fronts which were fighting for the independence of Eritrea. So in 2000 and in 2000, the war with Ethiopia was officially over, and there was a ceasefire or some sort of peace agreement that was signed between the two countries. So the country had to go through a new transition from a war, constitutionless, a nation under construction, to a nation which should be constructed. And to officially construct a nation, you have to have the vision for the nation, and that vision comes from the constitution. That is an agreement, a binding agreement between the citizens of this nation and how this nation should function in the future. So that was the question that was raised by some of the ministers within the Eritrean government at that time. So the question was we had a constitution, a draft of constitution. It wasn't officially a constitution, but there was a draft of constitution that was drafted in 1997, just before the war erupted between Eritrea and Ethiopia. So that constitution, the ministers were asking for the implementation of the constitution. and also for the allowance of freedoms that should be given to the people and also to parties. So because there was more than one front which were fighting for Eritrean independence, these fronts were still not in the country. As some of the individuals joined the EPLF and became part of the government, but the fronts as fronts decided not to join, and they stayed outside because they were not allowed, because it was a matter of power basically. So they weren't allowed to get into the country. So this constitution gave the provisions, it has the provisions for parties to be formed, for countries, for people to have their own institutions or civil societies to operate within the country. But as you can imagine, a person who was trying to hold power as long and as much as he could, the current president of Eritrea, decided not to go forward with this plan, and he decided to arrest the ministers. So 11 ministers were arrested, and later on these were known as the G15. So the G15 is a group of people who were primarily ministers. Amongst these ministers and also government advisors, who were high-ranking officials basically within the Eritrean government. So amongst this G15, G11, we can call them 11 people were arrested, and 4 people went in the country or they had left the country. So and also the private media was closed. So this is the turning point, actually, because the private media was functioning as a body that was holding the government accountable to the actions that he was doing, and there was so many newspapers, special newspapers, which had worked rigorously to enlighten the people, and to also create a public opinion about the issues that were taking place within the government. And these newspapers were seen as a threat to the government. The editorial line wasn't necessarily aligning with what the government was wanted. So any private media was closed, and that meant the shutdown of any freedom of expression, any form of freedom of expression, unless that expression aligns with what the government is narrating or telling. So that was the beginning, and our take on this as the Eritrean detainees coordinating committee is the rights issue. So people are entitled to the freedom of expression, and this is not a provision that a government or person would give. It is, in fact, it is a universal human right, and anyone is entitled to express their views, their opinions, and also hold political views, which are not necessarily in alignment with what the government or what the specific government is saying. And as though we are now saying that the freedom of expression was actually abolished and violated in Eritrea by the closure, long before the closure of the newspapers and the private media. But the closure of the private media and the private newspapers meant that the government is actually acting as a turning into a dictatorial government. And that was the beginning of the I wouldn't say the beginning of the end, but the beginning of the dictatorship. So it started taking its form as a dictatorship government. So now in this committee, we are actually asking for specific things to be implemented. One, the immediate release of all prisoners in Eritrea. When we say prisoners of forcibly disappeared people are included, people who are in detention, people who are in prison without doing anything, people who had never been tried to be released immediately, and if any one of them is accused of any form of transgression, of violation, or trial or breaking the law, then they should be tried and presented before the court, and the legal procedures should take place. And arbitrary arrest had been taking place in Eritrea almost every single day, and that is a transgression and violation of the rights of the individuals and the rights of the people. Um, so we today are asking the immediate release of these prisoners. We are asking also the immediate release of the G11 as government officials who were in a position of making a decision, and we stand by them, and we also believe that they have the right to be tried if they had committed any form of crime. They had the right to representation, lawyers. They also have the right to um, uh, represent themselves if they want to. So this is our position, and this is not actually an ask from our side. It is actually a demand, and our rights and the rights of these people, we are demanding it from the government of Eritrea. At the moment, we are dealing with a huge mass arrest in Eritrea, and we are not only in a position of that, we are actually asking and working rigorously to turn the status quo into having a country where there is a respect for human rights, and becoming a voice for those voiceless people who are in prison and under arrest. So this is the message that we have on the 18th of September to the Eritrean government. And to anyone who supports the Eritrean government, we have people who are Eritreans who fought for the country. If that is a major for you, we don't need, but it is not for us, as we don't really need someone to fight for the country for them to be, granted the human rights. The human rights are universal, regardless of the contribution of that person in the Eritrean war struggle for independence. It's not a measure for someone to have their rights being provided or granted, and no one should have the ability to take these rights from them. So this is our message to the Eritrean government. طيب، مساء الخير على الجميع، مساكم الله بالخير. اليوم هو هذا الفيديو هو بمناسبة 18 من سبتمبر عام 2001، وأتحدث فيه أو نتحدث فيه كتنسيقية يوم المعتقل الإريتري عن الاعتقالات والتغييب التعسفي والاعتقالات التعسفية والتغييب القسري الذي طال الكثير من الإريتريين بما فيهم الصحفيين وبما فيهم الوزراء. في 18 من سبتمبر عام 2001 اعتقلت الحكومة الإريترية 11 وزير من الوزراء وصحفيين إريتريين بمناسبة وفي ذلك اليوم. وبهذه المناسبة نحن اليوم لنا بعض الرسائل التي نريد أن توجهها للحكومة الإريترية من هنا من تنسيقية يوم المعتقل الإريتري. أولا، نطالب بإطلاق سراح كافة المعتقلين الذين اعتقلوا بسبب أفكارهم وآرائهم وبسبب مواقفهم، وحريتهم ليست هبة من الحكومة، إنما هي حق لهم، فالحرية حق. في 18 من أبريل أيضا تم إغلاق الإعلام الحر، الإعلام المستقل، وبهذه المناسبة نحن نطالب بإطلاق سراح كل المعتقلين، كل الصحفيين المعتقلين. نطالب من الحكومة لا نسأل ولكن نطالبهم بإطلاق سراح كل المعتقلين، وأيضا نحملهم المسؤولية لكل شيء قد يرتكب ضد هؤلاء. إذا كان هناك ثمة تهم وجهت لهؤلاء الصحفيين وهؤلاء المعتقلين، فلا بد من توجيه هذه التهم وتقديمهم للمحاكمة إذا وجدت هنالك أي تهم. إذا لا توجد أي تهم، فبالتالي يجب إطلاق سراح كافة المعتقلين. نحن لا نحصر المعتقلين في المعتقلين الذين اعتقلوا في سبتمبر 18 2001، لكن هؤلاء ضمن اعتقالات طالت كل الإريتريين قبل سبتمبر وبعد سبتمبر 18 2001 وبعده أيضا. فهنالك اعتقالات منذ بداية الاستقلال في 91 وحتى هذه اللحظة. فالآن نطالب الحكومة الإريترية بإطلاق سراح كافة المعتقلين بهذه المناسبة. وأيضا نريد أن ننبه المتابعين والمشاهدين أن الاعتقالات كانت تعني انتهاك الحقوق، وهذه الزاوية التي نريد أن نتحدث منها، أن إغلاق الصحافة الحرة والصحافة المستقلة، وأيضا الاعتقال التعسفي بدون أن يكون هنالك أي محاكمات يعتبر انتهاك الحقوق، انتهاك للحقوق. وكانت بداية النهاية أو النهاية للإعلام المستقل والحريات التي يرعاها الإعلام المستقل. والإعلام المستقل كان يمثل الجهة التي تحاسب وتحاكم الحكومة على قراراتها وسياساتها التي تستخدمها، فبالتالي كان لابد من التخلص منه بأن يكون هنالك، لأن الحكومة كانت تدخل في منعطف تغيير مسارها السياسي وتغيير طريقة حكمها. فبالتالي اليوم مطالبنا تتلخص في الآتي: أولا إطلاق سراح كافة المعتقلين. ثانيا أن يكون هنالك محاكمات إذا وجد من انتهك القانون أن يقدم للمحكمة وبالتالي يجري عليه القانون. هذا ما نريد قوله، لأن في النهاية لأن الحكومة توافقية، والحقوق ليست منحة إنما هي ولا هبة، إنما هي واجب يجب أن تمنحه، أن لا تتعدى عليه الحكومة. وإذا كانت هنالك حقوق تتعدى الفرد إلى أن يكون هنالك جهة تنفذها الحقوق من حقوق الجيل الثالث كما يطلق عليها، أن لا تكون هبة، إنما هي واجب على الحكومة أن تنفذها. هذا موقفنا، وهذا ما ردنا أن ننبه به بهذه المناسبة. شكرا جزيلا لكم. نتمنى أن نلتقيكم قريبا في لقاءات أخرى، وأن يطلق سراح كل المعتقلين الذين غيبتهم الحكومة الإريترية في 30 عاما الفائتة. أشكركم جزيلا الشكر، والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته.